So, this video is going to be about is I want to talk about a recent blog post that I did on the Esri blog called Building ArcGIS API JavaScript API for JavaScript Apps with NextJS, right? So at the recent Dev Summit, I got a lot of questions about building more complicated React applications. People wanted to see a bit more. We have samples out there with React using Create React App and a couple other things, but people were more interested in like, how do I manage my application with Redux, for example, right? So I went down the route of just looking at Redux, and I've used it a bit before. I just figured, you know what, I'm gonna go full bore. Let's just do a Next.js application, which is what I did. So this blog kind of goes through the steps and talks about the code and everything like that. So I'm pretty much just going to go through that today and talk about how you would do something like this. So in my case here, I'm just going to follow the docs for create next app, right? So I'm going to do a TypeScript one. So I'll copy this one here. And I am going to be doing some copy pasting between the app I've already built and this app here, just because I've done it. There's a lot of typing. I'm lazy. I don't want to type. Devs in general are pretty lazy. Why do the work more than we have to, right? So okay, so let's try this command here. npx create next app at latest, and we're going to do TypeScript version because it's TypeScript. Come on. All right, so yes, proceed, do that. So project name. So let's go ahead and call this Next.js ArcGIS. Like so. And so Next.js is a framework for React, because really React is just a UI library and stuff. So this kind of brings in all the pieces you would need to build like a full-fledged React application with routing and everything else like that. It's pretty cool. So sorry, I was just looking at my screen here for a second. This is gonna take a while to install a package. Maybe I should have done this package installation before I started the stream or started recording here. That's okay, no problem. I'll speed this up when I do the edits. So it's installing everything, ready to go. And that's it. I mean, I'm not going to go through Next.js too much here. But I do want to talk about what is it that I want to build, right? So if I come down here, I'll show the end application. So the end application basically is going to be this app built for mobile first. And it's going to go ahead and have this list of power plants here. There's an item in the Living Atlas that displays all these different power plants. So I'm going to show a list by power plants. And then when you click on the power plant, I'm going to show the map and filter the map to those particular plants, right? So let's go ahead and open this. Let's go into cd next JS ArcGIS. I think it already did my node modules install. Yeah, it did. Okay, let's go VS Code here because I think it's just easier for people to see on the stream. And we'll make this bigger. And let me see what I have installed here. So I've got Next, React, and React DOM. So I'm gonna need a few other things here. So let's come over here. All right, so I want whoops. I want ArcGIS Core. I did say I was using Redux for this, so I'm going to go ahead and use Redux.js / toolkit, so the Redux toolkit. I won't go into detail about that, not really too much. Types for Redux, React Redux, because I'm using TypeScript. And a couple of things I need to do, which I wasn't overjoyed about, that I had to do in TypeScript to create the types, right? For Redux. I was kind of hoping I wouldn't have to do all that stuff. I already got React. I'm also going to do this SWR, which is a library recommended by the Next.js docs for doing fetching and caching of data and stuff, which is fine by me. I don't mind. It kind of just handles all the caching and stuff for you. So, okay, so this is everything I think I'm going to need. Any more dev dependencies? Not that I can tell. We're just gonna stick with the default bits. Okay, so there is one thing I need to start right off the bat. So What am I going to do here? So the first thing I want to do is I actually want to create my API route, right? So what's kind of neat with NextJS is it's the folder structure kind of dictates the routes in your application. And what's really cool is that you get this API route in here. So pages API. It comes with a hello TS, just kind of tell you how it works, right? And the basic idea here is that this is going to be like the root of my application. And any other pages I have in here are going to go ahead and be routed to. But this API route is a serverless function. So it's going to run in Node, separate from the browser. And then serverless functions are pretty much just like these, like really quick functions that run on the server, like any web API does. But once they're spun up, they kind of get killed away. The idea is that they save you server costs and stuff. Although I'm betting if your app gets hit a lot, depending on the cost of spinning up that service for a lot of views could be offset. I really don't know. Right? I don't really use serverless functions very often, but I know they're used with Next.js, so hey, I'll give it a shot. So I'm going to create one called Power Plants under here, new file, powerplants.ts, and I'm going to be using see here, ArcGIS core REST query. So okay, let's do this. Let's go ahead, come over here. Let's see here. Like I said, I'm gonna copy paste some work in here just so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so let's close this up and let's take a better look at what is happening here, right? I don't need this comment up here. Nonsense. Okay, so basically I'm going to pull in the execute query JSON method from the ArcGIS core library. And this is basically a method I can use to query a service. And normally you wouldn't use something like this. You would pretty much create a feature layer and then just query the layer directly to pull data in. But since this is running on in a serverless function and it's going to be running in a node environment, it's probably the route I want to go to do this, right? So here is the URL to the service I want to hit. It's a feature service, Power Plants, World Resources Institute, and the first index, which would be the first one, the first layer in the service. So I've got a type here for the data that's coming back. I mean, this doesn't have to be a type. This could be an interface, and I probably should make it an interface because interfaces, you know what I'm saying? I prefer in TypeScript, this is just a little tidbit. In TypeScript, I actually prefer to start with interface first. And if I can't use some sort of TypeScript utilities to do what I want to do and I need a type and I need to extend that type for whatever reason, then I'll create a type. But otherwise, I usually just start with interfaces. So this is my data that's going to be passed back from this API. So here is the handler function. So you default, if you export this name handler from your API route here, it'll get picked up by Next.js to do what it needs to do, right? So here's my query. I only care about one field in this case, and that's the fuel one field. And this is the field that's going to show the types of power plants. So I only really care about getting a list of types. I want all of them, but I only want distinct values. So distinct values is true. I don't need geometry. I don't care. This is just going to be for the initial list to display on my page. Return geometry false, right? So get my results with the URL, my query, and I'm going to go and filter those results because there's some null values in here I found when I was doing it, and then just sort them. So just a quick sort, and then I'm going to go and return this as a JSON response. This looks a lot like, you know, if you've done Express or any kind of node service before, you know, like an API, this is pretty much what it's going to look like. So okay, so that is done, ready to go. Save that. So what is the next step? So Redux and stores, right? So okay. Now if I run this, it's just gonna look like if I run it. So npm run dev is the command here. Okay, so here's the Next.js default page you're gonna get with your app and stuff. I don't really care. Don't worry about that right now. Okay, so next thing I want to do is that when I get these results, I need to start building out my my state, basically the state from applications. So I'll start with the Redux stuff first, right? So I can create a folder in here called features. So let's do that. Let's create a folder called features. And this is kind of like, I don't know. I've seen this before, and it's just kind of some convention for putting stuff in there. So I'm working on the plants reducers in here, and we're going to go ahead and create another file in here called plants slice, right? So that's kind of like you create these slice functions that get used with reducers. So if I look at this here, let me find my copy here, and let's do a copy paste. And let's check out and see what this is doing, right? So I get this create slice method from the Redux toolkit, and here is my state for my application. So my application state is going to have an array of types, and that will be the list of the power plants. And then when I click on an item in the list, it's going to be the selected item at that point, right? So that'll be my selected. I could have gone through a whole step of like creating these objects, and each item is an object that has a selected value of true or false, but I'm not doing multi-select. And this is just easier for me to do, right? You might have, it's a preference, I suppose, but I'd rather start simple and start complicating things once I need to start complicating things. Simple is easier for me. My small brain can manage this, right? So this is optional because when I start the app, nothing's selected. So I want to create my state with just a list of types, right? So my initial state is an empty array. I create my slice, and it's going to, slice could be called plants, power plants. It was a weird name. I debated whether I should use power plants throughout the whole thing or just stick to my guns, use plants, and plants is fine. I don't think it's a big deal. My initial state in here, and then the reducers I'm going to use, right? So I have two reducers. I have one to update the types list. I'm just going to say types equal to the payload, so I completely replace it. I'm not going to try and do anything weird where I need to slice my array or nothing like that, because this only happens once when I load the app. So just completely add all of the types into the state, and then update selected, right? So at that point, which one of these strings am I selecting off there? Then I want to go ahead and export the actions off of my slice here. So that's going to be my update types and update selected. And then export the reducer for the slice. Remember, I created this plant slice using the create slice method, which is going to have a reducer on the back of it, right? I will say this, when I the create next app, I think did this for me. It doesn't add semicolons, and it's not part of the linting tools. It just did it here. I would really prefer to have semicolons, but you know what? I'm not fighting with the linter on this. I'm gonna let it do its job. If something breaks, I'll figure it out, and I won't go into what could break with that. They're weird. They're not weird, but it's beyond the scope of this video. Okay, so let's see here. What's the next thing we want to check out here, right? Okay, so after I create my reducers, which I've done here, this is gonna take all of my data, update my app state. I need somewhere to put these reducers where I'm going to update my store. And this is the store is what the components are going to access to get the data, right? So now I want to create a store somewhere, just app store. So let's go over here. Do I have an app folder? I thought I did. Maybe I don't. Okay, so I'm going to create an app folder. Now I'm going to create a store file. So new file, store.ts. There we go. Okay, so in my store now, again, a little copy paste magic back and forth, because I don't want to, I've already typed all this stuff, people. I've done this application. I've gone through multiple iterations of this at this point, so I know it like the back of my hand. Almost, close, not quite. We're getting there. Okay, so Redux Toolkit comes with the method to configure the store, right? So you give it your reducers you defined in your create slice method, and you've exported and everything like that. I can go and use that reducer from the slice and have that be my plants reducer. So I have multiple reducers here based on maybe pages or regions of my application or different data that I might be accessing. Like maybe I have different APIs I'm accessing across my application, and I want to keep those kind of isolated in some way. That's what I would have these different reducers for. You know, it's good. I like the idea of that isolation and separating stuff. I don't know, man. This like I said, I don't use Redux a lot. I used it enough to be familiar with it, but I don't know, it's fine. it could get overcomplicated if you're not careful. But if something simple like this, I think we're fine, right? Now at this point, because of TypeScript, because I'm using TypeScript, I need to do a few things here. So I'm going to export my store once it's been configured. I also want to export some typings for my store. So the root state is going to be equal to, there's this helper here to return the type for the type of get state, right? And again, the type of the dispatch is going to be my app dispatch. So I export those out so I can use them in TypeScript happily throughout my application. There's one other thing I think I need to do, and I don't know if I've mentioned it in the blog here, but the hooks. Well, I probably do, but let's jump the gun a little bit here. So I'll go to the app hooks.ts, and we're going to add these as well. Now, there are hooks you get with React Redux. You know what? I need more real estate here. So let's, oh, come on. Okay, so I use my hooks from React Redux, and I'm going to go ahead and type those hooks here. You don't necessarily have to do this if you're just doing regular JavaScript. This is like something you want to do if you're using TypeScript to get proper typings for the hooks you're going to use for Redux. It's one of those things just kind of, you know, I'm not happy about it. I don't know anybody that would be. But hey, you know, it's what you do. It makes TypeScript happy, but it makes the app easier to kind of navigate and do certain things with. I think it just makes me feel more comfortable with it. And now that I extended this, I made it bigger. I don't know how to make it smaller. Oh man, there we go. Because I had a little bit too much room. Okay. So we did the store. Okay, so the layout, right? So now, what is the layout of my application going to look like, and how do I want to like define that? So let's do this, right? We're gonna start jacking some stuff up. So okay. So I think first thing I want to do, so we got the router stuff going on here. Okay. We'll do the layout first. So the layout is basically going to be what my the frame, or it's in the name, people. The layout of my applications will look like, right? So I'll create a components folder in here. Components folder, right? Is that what I said? Yeah, components layout. And we'll make let's make two files here. So we're gonna make a layout.csx and a layout.module.css, right? So let me get my module for CSS. This one's got some, oops, here we go. Okay, so basically it's going to be some flex for display, you know, CSS flex, using flex grid, right? Flex layout, whatever, I forget. No, CSS grid, but flex layout for the display. Let's format this thing. There we go. So again, the layout part is flex as well. Then the links, I've got some overrides for my links here. So since I'm using the ArcGIS API for JavaScript, it comes with calcite components, the Esri calcite components. Those calcite components come with some CSS variables I can override for the calcite components that I'm going to use, right? So I'm going to override the foreground, well, not override, but I'm going to leverage the calcite colors that are already part of the API and the widgets to use for my app. This way things kind of, you know, match and they go well together, right? So these CSS variables are available for me to use, so I'm going to take advantage of them. So I'm going to use the fill for the foreground for my link here. I'm also going to use the background color as the calcite brand, and the foreground again for the color of the font in my header. I was trying some stuff with CSS grid here. I didn't like it. I didn't need it, I don't think. It kind of threw some stuff off for me here anyway, when I got into trying to add like the back button and stuff like that, and then this little text I add too, we'll see in a minute, it kind of threw me off there. So, all right, so this is CSS and CSS modules, which is kind of nice. I like that I can just use CSS modules inside of NextJS because I liked using them in Dojo quite a bit. They just really helpful and nice. They basically help to prevent name conflicts for CSS classes across your different components and stuff, right? if you've never used them before. Okay, so I'm already jacking stuff up. So I'm trying to find app hooks here. So wait, where's my component supposed to go? Here. I named it hook. It should be named, come on, hooks. My bad. Let's start looking at this whole layout nonsense we got going on here, right? So there's a bit going on in here. This is one of the things that took me a while to kind of put together, but I'm just going to kind of show you all at once kind of the way it worked. There's a lot of trial and error, just kind of setting stuff up. Basically, I'm going to have this app selector from my hooks here. If we come back to what hooks look like here, it's just having my, I don't know what the hell this did. It's just my type selector. So double check so we're seeing. Well, it's selected, right? So getting from my store, I've got the, that's not over here. So here's my state, my application state. I've got a list of types, and then I have the power plant that I clicked on, my selected plant. So in my layout, that's what this hook is going to do. It's going to get the selected property from my state, right? So now I've got some local state here where I'm going to show the previous button, which is going to be the back button to go back to the list from the map. And if I am on the page for the map, then I want to have that button shown. If I'm not, I don't want to show the button. This is one of those little things that took me a little while to kind of like get working the way I wanted it to. That's basically going to be defined by the routers. So in the router, I'm going to use the use router hook. I do like this. I got to say, I'm not a huge fan of hooks in general. I'm not. I'm sorry, right? But the hook that comes with the next router just works as I expect it to work, because from that point I can go ahead and find out my current path and everything like that. If I am on the web map path, then I want to show the back button. If I'm not going to show the back button, right? And that's going to take effect when the router gets updated, right? And this is kind of how use effect happens. If you're not familiar with it, it's going to run basically when whatever you have in the array gets changed at some point, right? This could be props, state, whatever, doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm going to return back the, so the head is like a special way that you can define in the component, define elements to the page. So this could be the head, that the title that shows up in the tab, or for example, my browser. That's going to be. I got my CSS coming from my layout module CSS, so it's called styles. That's where you see styles as class names in here. Have a header, and this is where I'm going to show that link to the back button or not, whether or not the state is telling me that I am on the main page or the map page. And then here I'm going to go and show, well, if I'm on the title is always going to be power plants in my header. But if I'm on the web map page and I'm showing the back button and I have a power plant selected, then I want to go ahead and show the name for the selected power plant. So that's what I'm doing over here, little parentheses, right? Then you're just going to return this back inside of a main element and return all the children back. So this is what the layout does, what you expect it to do. You have a component that's just going to lay out your page, and then somewhere in there, you're going to have the children that you're wrapping this component around get displayed, right? So, okay, I think that kind of covers that. Okay, so now the router. So if I come over to the pages app page here, this is kind of like the default page in your NextJS application. It's just like I said, this is like what you would when you create like a create React app application. This would be the equivalent to the app component that gets created, right? So in here, we're going to do a few things, take advantage of the router and stuff. So these are just for typing purposes in here. So I bring the next page, the types, and my app props in here. Now the provider. So I bring the provider from React Redux, and I got my store in here, and I'm just going to pass. So you should be fairly familiar, I think, with this kind of pattern, provider pattern, where you just wrap components around it. There's this layout function though, and this was in the next docs, and I don't know if I need it or not, but basically what we're saying here, so if I look at the layout, returning this layout method here, if a component has a get layout method on it, and we'll see that in a second when that happens, then we're going to go ahead and use the layout. And if not, we're just going to show the raw component as is. And then I guess this is in cases where maybe you have a layout defined for your page, but you there might be a route or something like that that doesn't use the layout. So you're going to show something else, a full page of something. I don't know, 404. I guess you want to show 404, but maybe like some message. I don't know. There's reasons you want to do it, right? So okay, so that's what the get layout's going to do here. So we've got that. Okay, now come over here. Features, plants. Okay, so now this is going to be for the API route. Basically, a component. What's component do actually? I completely forgot here. Oh, this is where I actually fetched my data, right? So this is a component for the list itself, the list of power plants that I want to show. So let me go ahead and pull that up here. So that's going to be under the features here. So features, plants, and it's a new file, and it's just I called it plants.tsx, right? And it sits right next to the reducer that's in charge of pulling this data. Again, this was just like and maybe it's an outdated convention for Redux, but it's just kind of the way I've done it before, so that's why I did it this way. So okay, so this is where I need a loader. So let's go ahead and come over here. Let's create a I just called it loader.tsx. So basically, when my page is pulling in data, I'm gonna have a fallback for this like animated loader in here, and that's all this does. It's going to return this animated SVG loader. I found it somewhere, but yeah, I tweaked it a little bit and got it working. So okay, I got to reload again the window. There we go, and this is still working. Okay, yeah, almost broke. I'm always afraid I'm gonna break this thing here somehow, but no, let's stop it. And it's running again because I've reloaded that a couple times. Import provider from module not found. React Redux. Did I not install that? Okay. Let me double check something here. Hold on. I thought I installed React Redux. I guess not. Okay, let's do that. npm I React Redux. Missed that one. Okay, here we go. Now everything should be working. Okay. So the component to display the actual list of data. So we're bringing in some things here. I have this loader. I'm using the hook from this SWR package. And God forbid, I can't remember what SWR stands for anymore. But like I said, this will it's like a little wrapper that you can use to cache fetch requests, stuff like that. I don't know if I need it, but it's in the next docs again, so I used it. Here are my hooks in here. So this is going to be where I pull my state, and then I can go and dispatch to update the state. And I've got this method to update the types, right? So I'm dispatch that update types in here. We'll get to that in a second. And my router, my loader. Okay. So here's my fetcher. This is what's going to fetch my data in here. So I'm going to go and fetch the input, and I pass this initial requests and get back the results, blah blah blah. And this is just kind of like stuff you need for the SWR bit. And when I pull in here, so my component here, I'm gonna get my data and any error that might happen, and use the API routes, so to API power plants, which we saw that we defined in the API route here. All right, so this is what's going to do my query and all that good stuff. I got lost, too much stuff happening. Here we go. Let me start closing things. Close others. Here we go. Okay. And I'm going to go and get my types here. So I'm going to go ahead and get the state for my current types. And I'm going to get my dispatcher in here and get this ready to go. And I have this loading state. So if I'm loading or not, and I can update that and then get the router. Right. So if I get data, or if I get the an error, which I don't check for the error here. I probably should have some fallback if something goes wrong, but I don't. So I don't recommend you do that. Just have a fallback page of some sort. And then my dispatch. Now, no, technically, I don't think I even need this, but because use effect can be kind of weird. I think if I take this out, will anything happen? This VS Code tell me anything? Maybe not. Technically, or anything that you used inside of a use effect. You're supposed to have a dependency for it, but I don't think I really need it in this case. So I'm going to dispatch the update types reducer, and I'm going to pass the payload of my types I get back in here, right? So I pass that up, and this is going to update the state from application, which is going to update the types here, which is going to trigger a re-render my component and get my types loaded in there, which means that it's going to go from the loader to hopefully a list of types. Hopefully I just don't get something back like no data, like an empty results. I don't want that. I know there's data in there, so I should get back a list of types. And on this list of types, every time you click on one, I'm going to programmatically use the router to go to a new route. I'm going to pass the type parameter with the value. Now this is because you might want to send this URL to somebody else, and that way they can open the URL and it'll display the map with the filter already applied to it based on the URL that you just sent them, right? So, I mean, I think that's kind of useful, not really required. It's just kind of a nice little thing I want to add in here, which I think is cool. So, and that's going to return back that list of items, right? So that's cool. All right. So now let's get down to the pages. So here's my index page, which is my home page. Let's go over here. Let's go to pages in here, and right, yeah, pages. Oh, it's already in here. Yeah, so here's the index page that we're currently. If I haven't broken it yet, if I refresh. So yeah, this is what I'm currently showing here. But now I want to change this index page to this one here. It's going to show the plants. Now, I don't know. Is this going to work right off the bat? Maybe. Maybe not. Probably not. We'll find out. Okay, so no errors here yet. So here's what we're basically doing. Oh, I need to update the CSS. So if I go to the home page over here, no, styles. If I go to styles, go to the home page, I need to go ahead and update this to my application. So boom, like that. There's some other stuff in here that I just left as is. The only things I really updated, I think, were for my loader up here, and maybe the list. Maybe we'll see. This app's probably gonna call jacked up now. No, surprising. Okay, I don't think it was that bad. The global. So I need to do some stuff in global because I'm using the ArcGIS API for JavaScript. I need to have some stuff in my global here. There we go. So I'm gonna add 423. It's the current version, right? Yes. Yes, it is. Sorry, I've been working on 424 recently, so I've got 424 on the brain. Okay, so there's my styles are updated. We're good to go. Okay, so by default, the home page is going to display the plants page, and then I'm going to add a get layout method. Remember, I had this get layout here on the home page, and it's going to go ahead and just have the page inside of it with get layout method that we're using for it. So if I come over here, oh, look at that. We've got it. I don't have a header, though. Why don't I have a header? Hold on here. Okay, well, that's like the least of my problems. We'll figure it out in a second. So here do I want to do. So where am I at? Here we go. So this page here, but where this is supposed to be for a mobile application. So let's go and make it a mobile size device. It's kind of big. Well, you know what? This for demo purposes, we'll make it this thing here, right? So I click on this and you go to a route, and I don't have a route yet for the web map. So I need to start working on that. All right, so here's my page. So I need a web map page. Okay, so let's come over here to pages. Close this up. I can get rid of this hello TS. I'm not using it, so let's get rid of that file. So it's not my way. Let's create a new webmap.tsx, and because it's under the pages folder, convention with NextJS is going to say that this is going to be equal to the webmap route, right? So okay, so before I can get to the webmap page, I need to talk a bit about using the API in my application. So this is how I do it, because I get asked this question quite a bit. I am building my React application, or I'm building my Angular application, whatever. How do I integrate the ArcGIS API for JavaScript into my app. My one clear word of advice here is isolation, right? Do not, again, do not import ArcGIS API for JavaScript modules into your components directly. Now, this is just my opinion, again, but I don't think you want to mess with all that inside of your component. A couple of reasons. One is it could make debugging more difficult, right? So if you are trying to add a map or a widget or something to your component and something goes wrong somewhere, you don't know if it's the hook, if it's an error with what the parameters you're giving to your widget from your component. You don't know what's happening exactly. So it could be difficult to track down. The other is it could be difficult to upgrade later on because you create a component and you've intertwined your map, maybe like a couple of widgets, something in there, and then you get a requirement that, oh, I don't want the widget in the map. I want to have it off in the sidebar. Okay, now you got to take it out of that widget and push it into a sidebar somewhere. You might have to rework some business logic. It's just not something I recommend. So this is what I do. I will create a mapping file under a data folder or map or whatever. It doesn't really, the name itself isn't really important, but it's just a separate module that all it does is create a very thin layer that you can use in your application to talk to the ArcGIS API for JavaScript. Okay, so I expose a couple of functions in here. I expose a initialize method, and I think I got one more. I'll clean up. That's all I need. Sometimes I'll have things like here, like zoom to, or I don't know, like add layers or something like that. Anything that's going to interact with the API parts, I'll add methods to it, expose them, and then use those in my components. Trust me, it's easier. If you're using something like Angular, you probably add this into like services. You can use it. Ember, the same thing. Ember services, you would use it there. And then in React, you just hook it up into components, or maybe even a context. If you're using like an API, the React context, you can implement it in there. One thing I got to do is I got to create my environment variable for my API key. So let's do that here. So new file .env. And what did I call it here? I called it next public API key. So I think in NextJS, if you have environment variables, I believe they have to start with next. I believe so. Vite is very similar in that case. The environment variables you put in your env file have to start with Vite, and then, you know, underscore, and then whatever it is. Kind of weird, but I'll roll with it. Okay, no big deal. So I've got my API key over here, so I'll copy that. Don't steal my API key. That's all right. I only use it a couple times. Okay, so there we go. So I logged that out. I'm going to remove this log here. Don't need it. Okay. So here's my component. So again, this is my interface for my mapping component. I've got a view, I've got a map, a layer, and then the saved extent. Okay, so what I do is I initialize this object here with this interface, and I have this handler. This is for some like if I'm switching my routes and I need to like destroy and then rehydrate my map when I switch routes or something like that, what I'm going to do is I need to remove all of any handlers I'm adding. So if I add an event handler or a watcher, I want to make sure that I'm removing all of that, right? So what I do here is that initialize method. It's going to take a container. The filter is basically just the selected item. So whatever the name of the, not the name, but the type of power plant, that's what my filter is in this particular case. So that's the arguments. So if I already have a view defined on my application object, I'll destroy it. I'm going to create my layer, and this is the layer for the power plants, and I give it a definition expression based off of the selected type. So that goes in here, and I've got my map, and I'm using the ArcGIS Start Gray, and that is a named base map. That's why I need my API key. Then I'm going to go ahead and have my map view. Now, if I have a saved extent in my object here, I'm going to go and set my extent to that saved extent using extent from JSON. And we'll see why in a second, right? So if I want to save this extent between different views or not different views, but routes, then it's easier for me just to save it to JSON every time, not a class object, right? So when the layer is done, I'll zoom to the whole layer if I don't have a saved extent ready for me to go. Here's my handler, so I'm just going to watch. This is using the reactive utils, not regular watch utils, but the new reactive utils are basically, I just care that if I have if stationary is true, and I have an extent, so if they both exist, this is just true or false. If it's true and I have the extent, then my saved extent is going to be equal to the JSON of my current extent, and I just save that every time it changes. That way I come back and I have it when I come back to the route. Okay, I think that's yeah, it's a nice little trick to save the extent of your map every time you get away from it and you come back to it. This is kind of a cool way you can do something like that. Okay, so when the view is ready, that's what when does. It means that the view has been hydrated and it's ready to use. Then I'm going to wait for the layer to finish loading, just in case. I can't remember why I needed this. I think there was a reason I needed to do this. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I do it anyway just to be safe. At this point, I create an element, div element here, give it a class list, and I'm going to go ahead and add this as an expand widget to the bottom. It's just going to be a description for my component here. If I come over here, yes, these are all the different classes I'm going to add to it. And I give it the description icon from the JavaScript API, and you can look up the doc to see how you can add these icon classes. It's kind of cool with the expand widget. I think it's neat. Then I go ahead and occupy my app object with the map, the layer, and the view, because I might want to get access to them at some point later on, right? So I have a cleanup method. So if I have when I clean up this method, so in the use effect in the web map view component is done, then it's going to run this cleaner. It's going to remove that handler that's watching for the extent and stuff to change, and it's going to go ahead and destroy the view too. So I destroyed the view twice just because I don't trust myself. I don't trust JavaScript. So I do it, just double check and do it twice, right? So no big deal. It's not a problem. So that's what that cleanup method's going to do. Okay, so that's the mapping module. This is my very thin API layer I use in pretty much all of my applications, regardless if it's React or Solid or Vue, whatever. It doesn't matter. I use something like this every time I do it. So now let's come back to our web map component. So like pages, and come to the web map page, and let's go and dump this in here. And you can see here that I am going to be using my layout again. I need a web map for styles. So in here, yeah, styles, new file. Let's do web map.module.css. Okay, so it's just the containers, flex display, and then the view div has 100% height and width. Okay, so that works. Okay, so there's my CSS, and I got my layout again. We're using the router, so this looks a lot like our index page and what we're using here. I'm getting my the update selected in here, right? So for the type from here. So this is basically, this is for going to be used if you give someone the URL to the web map page, and that URL has a type query in it. It's going to go ahead and update that, and then that'll update the layer in your map and everything else that you want to happen. So you get the same page you expect to get. Right, so that's what this is going to do here. That's why I have a dispatch and I update to selected with my type. Get that from the router. The router has that query on there, so that's going to be fine. And that's going to be this page here, type equals storage, for example. So the type will be storage in that particular case. So, all right, so here's my use effect. So this is where I pull in my modules, right? So here we go in my load map function. So my load map function, it looks just like my initialize method here. It has a container and the filter. I'm going to dynamically import my data mapping module, which is where I do all my JavaScript API stuff, and I call initialize method with that stuff, right? So I create a separate async function so I can do the dynamic import with the await in here because I think it's cleaner to do. Because inside use effect, you can't have async. This cannot be, for example, I can't make this an async method. You just, React to say, what's your problem? Why are you doing that? You shouldn't do that. You can't do that, right? So, but you can't call promises inside there. You just have to chain them and use .then and all that stuff. So what I do here is I have an async cleanup type here, or yeah, that's gonna be my promise that the load map is gonna call, because the load map is gonna return initialize. And remember, if we come over here to the initialize, it's gonna return this cleanup method, which is this method down here. So it's gonna return that async cleanup. So basically, when I'm in my use effect, I can return this method here. So when the use effect needs to clean things up, it's going to run stuff in this return method. So if I have an async cleanup, I'm going to call the promise on async cleanup, get the cleanup method, and then call it. It's a little bit more complicated than I would like, but you know, it works. It's fine. And then this is going to be dependent on the map ref and then the selected property from my store. And then the map ref is just going to reference the element here that is where I'm going to display my page. And again, I have the get layout function that we talked about before, which I don't know if it's working right now. I'm having issues. We'll find out. So let's refresh that. Error, default export is not in, what happened? I broke some. Oh no, here we go. It's working. There we go. So there's my header. Okay, so there's my global power plant. So if I come over here, click on nuclear, right? It will display all of the, oh, why is it making me sign in? Let's sign in. Okay, so let's come back to our app over here. All right. Let's click on oil. Do not give me a login. Come on, I got my API key in there. I know it. Working, you're working. No pop-up, no pop-up. Oh, there we go. And it works. Okay. What this part? About the zooming in part. If I zoom in here, let's come back. Go to gas. Come on. Doesn't like this. Something broke here. Okay. There you will. I'm surprised it didn't work. You will get errors sometimes in the console about the layer or something like that, not or the failing or something, but it should just display, even though you do get errors. It's just kind of like this weirdness that happens when you go back and forth and stuff. Okay, so there's my mapping file. We covered this. Empty cache and load it again. So there, you got a quick glimpse of the loader happening there. But now that I've already, even if I do like a empty cache or hard reload, you barely get it, right? So what's kind of cool with that loader is that if you access the app like on Heroku or Vercel or something like that, it's going to take that serverless function a second or so to kind of spin up, right? Because like I said, the point of serverless functions is that you spin them up and then they just kind of die right away. They're not long living processes. So it takes a couple seconds for it to spin up and you get your API result back. So that little loader will stick there for a second or two and then bam, you get your results. But once it's up and going, I mean, yeah, it's super fast. So no, this break, it's jacking up. Okay, I'm not gonna worry too much about it because I know it's gonna work in the app that you download from GitHub. That does work, as everyone that's used it told me it works just fine. I'm guessing I just missed something somewhere. Maybe it could be a new one of the updated packages here. Maybe that's the case. I'd have to double check. But this is it. So that is how you can use the ArcGIS API for JavaScript to build a application using NextJS and React and Redux and all the cool, fun stuff that comes with it. There's a lot there, I know. Trust me. But I hope that helps people out. Like I said, we get questions quite a bit about how to do some things that are a bit more beyond what we show in the basic demos, which is fine. And it's fun for me and the other devs, right? Because we get to troubleshoot some pretty cool things you guys do, and it makes us do, work a little bit to make sure that everything's working as expected. But yes, you can use the API in some of these more, I don't want to call them complicated, right? But more feature-rich frameworks like NextJS to do stuff. There's another blog post out there that someone wrote, Ben Elan wrote, when the API first got released as ES modules. He had some issues with it because of the server-side rendering in Next.js. So he has a really cool way to disable that in Next.js when you do server-side rendering and stuff. But I think the way that I'm doing things here, the way I got around it was the dynamic loading of the API inside the web map. I think that was the key to get this to work without that little tweak that he has. But I mean, if you're dead set on importing modules from the ArcGIS API JavaScript directly in your components, that might be a blog post you want to look at so that it'll work for you in that particular case, right? But again, that's just one of the things I don't recommend doing. I think it's a bad practice. I think you should really isolate that work to just these separate modules, do the work, and keep your components about the components, right? There should be like no business logic in here at all. Like the only logic that should be part of a component is things that are updating state or dispatching payloads to your Redux somewhere, right? None of these really do much other than show data. I heard something pretty interesting. I think it was on the JS Party podcast, and they were talking about React was described to them at some point of pushing JSON to pixels. And that's pretty much all you do, right? So treat your components like that. They just should be in charge of display, view, and UI, not any kind of logic at all. So I mean, that's it. That's all I had for today. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. You can always hit me up with any questions in the video itself, or hit me up on Twitter. Hit me up questions there. I answer questions a lot. I try to make myself available to cover as many questions as I can. If I don't get your question, please don't get offended or anything like that. I'm probably just I missed it, or I'm busy, or just slipped my mind. I try to backlog things like that and get to them as soon as I can. But if not, you can always hit the Esri Communities forum, ask your questions there. And not only do myself watch the Esri community, but a lot of the devs on the team and the product engineers on the team look at the forums and try and cover questions we can there. So hopefully you got some use out of this. Like I said, hit me up anytime. And thank you. Like, I just want to let you know that I've started a new podcast called The Bounding Box, where I'll be talking about geo development, web development, and everything in between. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and plenty of other places that you can find podcasts. There are a few episodes available now. I'll be having guests on talking about various topics, so please tune in, please subscribe, and let me know what you think. Thank you.